agenda out. Oh, man. Ariane. Okay. Do I have it? Okay. Do we need to review Zoom procedures? Seems like.
No, we should have Gabe and Sean introduce themselves, though.
Okay.
Let me make sure you guys can unmute.
Hi, Gabe Lajeunesse, Commissioner.
Sean Linehan, Commissioner.
Right.
Hi, guys. Okay, so does anyone want to move approval of the agenda?
Yeah.
I
Anybody
move
want?
approval.
Okay,
Gabe, seconds.
and then what do I say? Everyone,
All in favor?
all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All right. Comments from the chair. Well, Ariane is sadly not here today. I need to do this. Let's see. I do have a question for Mike about the city council meeting from June 11th. There's after the city plan discussion, there was discussions about commissions and committees being consolidated. Were you there for that part?
I wasn't, but I got the update
Okay.
afterwards.
Did they make any final decisions on that?
I don't believe they've made final decisions,
Okay.
but
Was there any relevant discussion about the planning commission?
yeah, it won't impact the planning commission. We're one of the statutory
Okay.
statutory committees,
Okay.
so it won't affect us.
And one of the other questions I had is just for background. I think one of the commissioners mentioned, or one of the city councilors mentioned that there had been a situation where the housing committee, I think, brought forward a proposal about short-term rentals that they found that they thought wasn't in agreement with their kind of like our own city plan. Do you remember what that situation was?
I think it was a separate issue. The short-term rental, they had proposed changes, might be a little more than a year ago.
Okay.
And they had wanted to have a short-term rental ordinance, and the council didn't really go along with it. They kind of went along with a framework and said, we'll do the registry in order to understand the extent to which this is an issue, if it is or isn't an issue, and that they would be coming back with some information in a year to discuss whether or not we would start setting fees and those types of things.
Okay.
But the housing committee had their resignations and Josh has left, so it's going to kind of be on hold until we re-get the new people in both of those seats before I think that comes back up.
How many committee members are left?
I don't know. Josh was, I don't even know how big the committee was to begin with. That was one Josh was running.
Okay. And I thought that part was interesting. I just wanted to hear more about what the conclusion was. So is there a registry now?
I think there is, but it's not really enforced, and that's some of the issue that comes up. I don't know the details of where it was. There was a lot of discussion at the time of, well, we'll have members of the committee volunteer to administer and enforce the ordinance, and so I think we just have to have a revisit that ordinance in its entirety and decide to what extent we need to move forward with changes to either do it or not do it.
Okay. Have there been any other kind of like city planning developments in the past 2 weeks?
Not that I really can think of, other than all the work we did to get the city plan posted,
Right.
which was posted last Friday. So that the new plan is up on the website.
Okay.
And we've got the position posted. Josh's position is posted, and we're taking applications through June 30th, and it'll remain open until we fill it. So,
Okay.
but I have received 10 applications already, so it's,
Nice.
yep. a lot of good applications. So we'll
Great.
keep hoping we get more. So we've got a good selection to choose from.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's all I had. General business? About anything not on the agenda? I think Peter has his hand up.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't stay very long for the meeting because I have a Montpelier NeighborNet meeting at 6. I'm a member of that. I have some questions that I'd just like to ask. I probably don't have time to answer them. On the agenda, item 5A refers to a report. I did not see that report in the packet. Is that report?
The planning commission has to give me the information to produce that report. So they have to have the discussion that analyzes the extent and then instruct me as to what to put in that report. So there isn't a report in hand ahead of time.
But is good, but it says it's going to be voted on. It's going to be
Yes,
voted on tonight.
They're going to vote on a report tonight. So they'll make a motion to instruct the staff to develop a report.
So they're not voting to approve the report. They're voting to have you ask you to do a report.
This is what is specifically written in that particular statement in state law. So we're going to have a meeting. We're going to discuss what's in there and then vote on a report that analyzes the extent to which, and they could write the report here if they chose to.
Other than that, you barely have a floor.
Well, then we better have a unanimous vote.
All right, I'm gonna go on to my next question, but what you just said sounds ridiculous. You just mentioned that there were changes made to the city plan. It was posted, quote, last Friday. In other words, what you're saying, what, end of day? When was it posted on Friday?
It's online. It's the web-based plan. So the whole plan is there.
When was it posted?
What specific time?
No, all right.
I said I posted it on Friday.
All right, on Friday. Okay.
I mean,
And how long is it going to be on before? Are there going to be hearings the way there were earlier?
The city council instructed changes to be made. We made those changes. They were completed on Friday. The document was loaded on the website on Friday and posted. The next public hearing is July 9th, and that's a city council public hearing.
And there'll be at least one, right? I mean, there may be more if they, okay.
Yeah, it's the council's decision how many they want to have.
All right, and when you say the report, is it the web report and or a PDF report? I'm sorry, plan. Is it it's the city plan? Is it the PDF city plan and or a PDF city plan?
The city plan that is on the website, the web-based plan has been updated. Included within the web-based plan in the additional resources is the PDF version that matches that plan. They have been checked to make sure that they whatever changes were made in one document were also made in the other document. So they are both there. There are hard copies in City Hall and in the planning department.
And is the plan, the PDF plan, downloadable and printable on an 8.5 by 11 pages?
Yes, it's downloadable and you can print it. It's printable on 11 by 17 for the big ones as well if you want. Or you can request and we can give you copies.
Okay, but the 8.5 by 11 ones are readable. They're not in tiny little print, right?
It's formatted for 11 by 17. If you'd like to have copies of those, we can print copies of those and have them left for you.
And what is it that's going to be the official plan? The website and or what, including the PDF? Is that what's going to be the official plan? That's
The
gonna be
official,
submitted?
the official plan is, the web version is the official plan.
And the city council understands that, because that's not what that's what I understood from reading the Bridge article. But when I talked to some members of the city council, that was not their understanding.
Well, we had that conversation and they did not vote to change that.
All right, I wish you luck when you talk to the city council about that, because I know at least two city councilors who think that the PDF plan and the city plan are both the official plans. All right. And the last question I have is not really a question, it's a suggestion. I know there've been discussions from time to time of barriers to building housing. And I've been party to some of these discussions when I was on the Housing Task Force. But I hope you will revisit the issue of barriers. And it's not just what are the barriers in the zone, in our zoning regulations. What are the barriers to actually doing something that our regulations seem to do? For example, I'll just give you one example. Mike has spoken about that for properties that have water and sewer infrastructure hookup, you may put as many as 6 units on whatever parcel previously allowed you to have 1. But that's only in theory, because when you then apply setbacks and other things that are in the height restrictions, density restrictions, whatever, there's a whole bunch. When you apply those, you can't put 6 units hardly anywhere. So let's be real about the barriers. Also, as came out in the previous meeting, it's not just the barriers of the zoning regulations per se, it's how much can be decided by the staff and how much goes to the DRB. Going to the DRB is hellacious. And if you've never been to a DRB meeting, I suggest you look up the meeting where the DRB basically was demanding of the Cody Chevrolet, who just wanted to replace their existing sign, which had fallen apart. And he practically had to get down on his knees and beg. This is a stand-up citizen of our community. So we really need to think about not just the zoning regulations, but how they're implemented and what that does to discourage people. And I'm not talking about discouraging big developers. I'm talking about discouraging people who might do infill smaller projects, like me. I left. I went to Barry and did my projects. I failed on 4 consecutive projects, each for a different reason, but all having to do with the fact that the regulations and the implementation of the regulations are not set up to enable somebody like me to do a relatively small development. I really hope you'll take some specific examples and figure out how can we get this to happen. When Josh came on board, he said to me, oh, infill is the low-hanging fruit. Well, guess what? In his entire stay here, none of that low-hanging fruit got picked. None. All right, I got to go to my other meeting. I'm sorry.
Can I respond quickly, Peter?
Sure.
This is Tim Sinnott. We've over the past handful of weeks, we have been receiving many very specific recommendations for change that we have worked through very rapidly, and I'd say quite successfully at a commission level, and we'll see what the city council has to say. I appreciate your feedback, and if you have a bulleted list of very specific pieces, I think it's already been proven that the planning commission is ready and willing to listen to those.
I made some specific suggestions. They were all dismissed.
You could send them to me directly if you'd like to.
Oh, he's muted.
You're done, Peter.
I think he's
I
muted.
think you're still on mute, Peter.
Who said that? I don't know the person who said that. How can I send
Yeah,
it?
this is Tim Sinnott.
All right, and I guess I can find your email somewhere. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Does anybody else have something?
Yeah, I'm gonna reiterate, the fact that Peter raised a really legitimate question that we're gonna vote on a report, or that you're planning to vote on a report that you haven't seen or written or even seen a draft of in order to continue this charade. But the level of disenfranchisement of the public, and I raised it in my last meeting comments. I hear constantly, even this morning, that there's no point in speaking up. It's a waste of my time. They don't listen. I've told you about 5 of the committees that have said that their input was disregarded and dismissed, and I personally have experienced it. So this charade that y'all are consistent with the goals of 4302, really, that's the make or break one. And I hope, Gabe, you'll have the integrity to vote no tonight just to keep this discussion open, because you only have 4 commissioners here, and without a unanimous vote, this report, you'll have to read a review of it when it's written and decide whether it still cuts the mustard. But the council asked for a red line version so that all the incredible number of changes that both Mike had put through after the planning commission was done with it, and then one of the city councilors put a whole package in, voluminous, which are not fairly or accurately or completely represented in this table, dramatically changed this plan. And city councilors asked for a red line version so they could see. The people in the public asked for the red line version, and it was agreed that that's a good idea. And Mike said, if he can. And now he's coming back right now and saying, no, we can't be bothered. It's not required. And that's supreme arrogance that Mike exhibits, that he's going to steamroll this thing through with your being complicit in it, regardless of how incomplete or how damaged the city participation in, how you will be doing further damage to city participation by doing this. And it appears that y'all are doing it willingly, and it's entirely inconsistent with the goals of 4302. The short-term rental ordinance should have been fully fleshed out and incorporated into the plan with specific recommendations and or cautions or areas that need more study. That's fair fodder for a planning commission. And instead, you're learning about it now after you voted the plan out. Now you're about ready to rubber stamp the council changes. I mean, really, if you can't do better than that, you shouldn't be on the planning commission. So you're going to have a discussion. They're going to give the information. You're going to vote on the plan that before it's been written tonight in order to keep Mike's railroad going. And I just caution you to, especially Gabe, the only one I have confidence in here, to have the integrity to not allow this to continue.
Thank you. Anybody else? Somebody just joined us.
That's Dave Delcourt from the Times Argus.
Oh, I see. Okay. Any other comments from the public? Nope. All right, moving on. So we are reviewing changes to the city plan by city council.
Yep. So the premise of this meeting is that under state law, if the city council votes on substantial changes, that the document, that the proposal goes back to the planning commission. And what's written here in A is literally what is in state law. Vote on a report that analyzes, so the planning commission must vote on a report that analyzes the extent to which the changed proposal, when taken together with the rest of the plan, is consistent with the legislative goals established in 24 VSA 4302. So what I gave you as a handout and an email was the required report that we sent to council in April. And the first half of that document, it was kind of the memo looking one. That the first half of that was the consistency with the goals of 4302.
Right.
So what I've done to try to facilitate this conversation is, so again, we're looking at whether those changes that are proposed are consistent with the legislative goals of 4302 when taken with the rest of the plan. So
I read it to mean that the changes that have been made, whether they rise to the level of now kind of like negating something that was in the required report.
yes.
Like a typo correction would not rise to that level. Deleting the housing chapter would, right?
Correct.
So like, do any of these changes rise to the level of?
Yeah, so I was
altering
going to
the
go
report?
through relatively quickly, run through a quick, and the changes are in that Excel table and are, if you're looking for additional details, you could look them up on the specifics of what like Sal Alfano and those guys sent, but they were pretty clear in their approval as to what they were wanting changed. So I'll just run through really quick on a list of things I pulled out looking at what was changed. So the goal number one, to plan development so as to maintain the historic settlement pattern of compact villages and urban centers separated by rural countrysides. That has 4 parts. Most of those are kind of in the land use sense of the land use plan. In the land use plan, we added the tier 1A category. Country club road strategy was reworded. There was a phrase that said as much as 500 units would be a country club road. That was asked to be reworded to be at least 300. So that change was made. The new country club road site plan was added, was replaced. We fixed a goal where there was an inconsistency between the storyboard and the implementation plan. One had "and that incorporates" and the other one said "with," so we made them the same. So again, not a substantial change, just a change in how something was worded. And the lobbyist that was medium priority was now high priority. Goal number 2 at the state, to provide strong and diverse economy. That's looking at the economics. Within the economic chapter, there were references to Montpelier Alive that were changed and adjusted. Sometimes we referred to them as an economic development organization. And they really wanted to be described differently, so we made a few adjustments to that. Gabe, you got a quick question?
Why don't you just go through? I'll take my hand down.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was a request to make the hotel a high priority. That was voted on. Amend the outdoor recreation promotion strategy. That came from the Parks Commission. And there was another inconsistency between the storyboard and the implementation plan on a goal. One said, one had it labeled as specifically, and the other one did not use the word specifically, so we inserted specifically. Broaden access to educational vocational opportunities. There were no changes that this city council made that affect that goal. 4, to provide safe, convenient, economic, energy efficient transportation system. There was a request to clean up the complete streets map, which we did. Number 5, identify, protect, preserve important natural historic features. So we changed, there was a goal, HR 4. So 2 changes that were made overall. One was to add colors to the implementation plans, and the other one was to add references so that way, if you were to look at a strategy, it wouldn't just have the strategies. There would be like LU1 is strategy 1, LU2 is strategy 2. So we added those numbers in. So LU4 or HR4 in this case, there was a change that said implement this policy, and it was adjusted to say adopt, and that was a request from Sal. Change the designated downtown description. That was done by Montpelier Alive. That was a request from them. And that was just, these are all really minor changes that were requested in those, just how they're described, how the relationship is between the city and Montpelier Alive. And then 6, so the rest of 5 and 6 kind of also get into natural resources. There were changes, the recommendation from the Parks Commission on the ash borer strategy. All it did was changed how it was described, how the climate action plan was described. The description in the box was amended. It combined strategies on mapping. So there were like 3 mapping strategies. They combined them into 1. So there's 1 mapping strategy now. They expanded the invasive species and street tree programs to be, 1 was to look at private properties for the invasive species and to survey the dams. In number 7 for energy efficiency, that one just had updates to the PV and solar hot water maps, which were just acting wonky. So we found the issue with those and we had to recreate them. So now they are now fixed. On 8, maintain and enhance recreation opportunities. So the Parks Commission again had a number of small changes on the maintenance of trails, economic development strategies, which I mentioned earlier. They talked about new park goals. So they did have new park goals, one of which was to coordinate with regional partners. So most of them were the same. They just kind of took 3 and reworded them and made them into 4. And they changed the green print strategy. 9, encourage and strengthen agricultural and forestry industries. There are no changes that affect that. Provide wise and efficient use of natural resources to facilitate the appropriate extraction of earth resources. No changes were made that affect that goal. Goal 11, availability of safe and affordable housing. There were some minor changes to the housing. Country Club Road had some tweaks to it. The way that's worded. Removed in particular rental units. That was the storyboard change that had been requested. It talked about
there was like
the piece in red there on.
yeah,
Yep.
the percentage or number of units that would be primarily rental.
Yeah, we had talked about Montpelier has goal of creating 600 housing units over the next 8 years, a majority of which would be rental units. And
Yeah.
they struck the majority of rental units.
Yeah.
So there was an ask to add in a TIF citation, which was added in, which sends you to the state to get information on TIF. Remove the rec center as an emergency shelter. That was noted that that was not approved. It was in our plan that said that the plan was to do these renovations to put the emergency shelter in the basement, and that was not approved. That was recommended but not approved. And then there was an amendment to the synergies to clean up some pieces. Number 12, which is to plan for finance efficient systems of public facilities and services to meet future needs. As I mentioned, there were some changes to the parks, the aspirations and goals, small implementation strategies and storyboard changes, but overall there was very minor changes to those. 13, the availability of safe and affordable childcare. There was only typo changes. And encouragement to flood resilient communities. There were only typo changes. So as we said, there's a majority of these are listed there, but if you really go through that list of what was recommended to be changed, they're very minor changes.
That list is solely incomplete.
This is the list that was voted on by City Council.
So does anyone want to take time to look through the report and the matrix before we
Well,
discuss?
So Mike, I had a couple things. When I had done my review, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
So the material from the Parks Commission, it seemed like there was quite a bit there. And I'm sure it's all in line with the state goals for the plan. Just can we confirm that? Like,
What was
we're
the
concerned
question?
about meeting the statutory goals, right? The fact that the Parks Commission recommended those changes, that doesn't impact that. Is that correct?
Yeah, they made changes to the goals, but it doesn't change our conformance with these requirements of the consistency with the 4302.
Okay. And then the other one that I couldn't quite follow from the notes. So Alan Goldman had several comments in there, I think some of which had been discussed in earlier sessions that we had, some maybe not. Were those adopted or were those tabled for now? What was the outcome on those?
So there are a number of them that are in which have the green no change. That meant that they were on the list of proposed changes that had been made, but the council voted not to make.
Okay, thank you.
So in this list, the no change and done are basically actions that are finished by the planning department. And this is what is currently posted as of Friday in the city plan
Yes.
website.
Yeah. So if you were to look at like number 42, James Moore's recommendation, the suggestion was the May was updated to will in the land use chapter, but not the housing chapter. Recommend making the change to match. Do not recommend accepting other changes. That's what they approved. So that was done. The May was changed to will in that particular one, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Elevate this to a high priority. That's done. So I went through and made that a high priority.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, this generally feels like a collaborative effort where the planning commission puts together the entire city plan, sends it over to city council, gets public feedback, brings their own opinions plus the ideas of their constituents, votes for changes. Those changes are done or not done and posted to the new city plan, which is online as of Friday. From my personal opinion, that feels exactly how this process should go. I don't personally feel like there's the need for a lot of back and forth. What you've described generally feels like a path forward from my perspective. I think my only one note or concern, I don't think we need to do anything with it. It's already changed. But if I'm just reading the language now from the housing chapter, talking about number of units. So Country Club Road, it says 300 to 500 units, and Sabins Pasture 300 to 450 units. If we're at the lower end there, that's 600 units among those two properties. Still having a 1,500 new units goal in the next 20 years puts a lot of pressure for development throughout the rest of the city. That's my one comment. I think that the goals should be quite high. We should stay like the 500 and 450 units feels like it makes a lot more sense to me. For those two properties, those numbers are still in there. So that's my only comment about numbers and a little bit of a concern there. But if that's what city council decided on at the end of the day, then I'm okay with it. So from
No, I agree with that. I mean, my only other, I mean, these are quibbles. Is like the language to remove, in particular rental units. Again, I'm just trying to figure out what, if any of the changes rise to the level of changing this report. Does removing in particular rental units affect our ability to say that this plan this plan encourages the needs of a diversity of social income groups? I mean,
yeah,
it could be argued, but I don't think it.
Well, they were really hung up on rental and the fact that it was highlighted, but they wanted it to be more general. And by
Yeah.
making it more general, I don't think that
Right, it's not
impacts.
excluding rental units,
no, I mean
right.
you know,
the housing chapter still like the little paragraph that's in there currently. The city plan values both rental and owner occupied housing equally. What is of primary concern for each occupancy type is affordability. Creating housing at a variety of price points, both rental and for sale, is the primary objective of this plan.
So there's
That's the
enough
general statement. They did have issue with I think it was 600 units, primarily rental.
right.
Yeah, that they wanted to strike.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, that's the only change that would even kind of rise to this level. Gabe and Sean, how do you guys feel about it generally?
I mean, Mike answered the couple of questions that I had. I feel comfortable sending this back. I don't really know process wise what needs to happen. We endorse it, or we acknowledge that we reviewed it, we signed off on the report, whatever that language would be. I support it.
You haven't seen the report.
So I sat in that city council meeting. I listened to all of the stuff that they went through. I just don't think that there were many significant changes to the plan. At least not changing significant portions of it that we should worry about.
So Mike, and I assume Tim, you you also felt good about the changes made.
Yeah, nothing from the, I was there for at least one of those meetings, and nothing rose to a level of huge concern for me.
So Mike, are we voting on this report to certify that we still think the city plan satisfies the criteria of the statute? Is that what we're voting on?
Yeah, that in a sense, that's what you would be voting on.
Okay.
And I can give you a motion, but I guess we need to have some public input as well, but yeah.
Sure. Before we get there, so what are the next steps from your
table? The only requirement is that before the next hearing that this report is provided to them. And again, you can certainly instruct me to draft the report and submit it to them. That is within your purview. Or if you want to see that report, we can certainly put that report on the next agenda. But really the extent of the report is gonna talk about. So again, let's looking at what it says, vote on a report that analyzed the extent to which the changes taken together is consistent with the legislative goals. I can summarize a little bit of what I said, attached table, the matrix, and go through and basically put together a report that says upon reviewing these changes as outlined in the attachment, we find the report,
Right.
or we find that the changes are consistent when taken together with the rest of the plan, are consistent with the legislative goals.
Okay.
And
So we
I can
are-
give you a motion for that when we get there.
Okay. I mean, so I think what has to happen before the motion?
You'll probably need to have some public input.
Oh, public input from our members of the public. Oh, Peter left.
I'll just reiterate, I think you're conducting a farce here, that you are not doing the diligence, you're not even familiar with the changes. This summary does not reflect the discussion or the content of the changes that were discussed. The issues of format and accessibility to the public, you're disenfranchising all the computer averse or ill-equipped people. And that's why people insisted that the paper document be the official one. So this does not meet the goals of 4302. And you don't care to dig in to even learn what the goals of 4302. You just care to continue to rubber stamp what Mike puts before you. And therefore, we will not get a credible planning commission until we get rid of Mike.
Okay. Tom, no comment? All right. So I think those are our members of the public. Does anybody want to discuss Steve's comments? All right. So then the motion?
You could, if you chose, make a motion to instruct staff to draft a report stating the changes to the Montpelier City Plan 2025, taken together with the rest of the plan, is consistent with the legislative goals established in 24 VSA 4302.
Okay. So does anyone want to make that motion?
I will motion to instruct the staff at the city to prepare and the report that analyzes the extent to which the change proposal, when taken together with the rest of the plan, is consistent with the legislative goals for 24 VSA 4302.
Does anybody want a second?
I will second that motion.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
I have to say the ayes have it.
The ayes have it by unanimous, right? Okay, so moving on to interim zoning proposals. Is there a question of timing or when is city council ready to? Hear
So,
these?
yeah, so I'm not sure how last meeting concluded. So we had a discussion. We were going to have to look into whether or not there was a public hearing requirement, which there is. So that is why it's warned for July 9th. So that
For our interim
so
zoning
the
changes.
interim zoning will be
Okay.
on the council for July 9th. It has been warned and it is on the city website. And we did have one additional change that was added on to your proposal.
Hmm.
And that change is to urban residential, which is the Country Club Road property. And the proposal is to strike the height requirement. There's a minimum height requirement of 24 feet or 2 stories
Minimum or maximum?
minimum. So there's a minimum. You have to be at least 24 feet tall. And we're currently in negotiations with Turtle Island, and they need to put some additional, in order to accommodate all of their classroom space, they need to have some, I won't say temporary because they're not temporary, but short-term accommodations. And those would be less than 24 feet, so they weren't allowed. So in order to facilitate that lease agreement through, we're going to go through and delete that one provision, the 24-foot minimum, and we'll all address that when we're going through the permanent. Because we won't have any proposals on that site until after that. Until after the planning commission's gone through this anyway, so. But it'll let us get
Yeah.
those interim changes through so Turtle Island can get some temporary classroom space.
When are they planning on breaking ground?
They're trying to get as soon as possible to get the lease signed.
Okay.
Then they're going to be working to modify the existing building, which will take
Okay.
most of what they're trying to do. And they hope to open in September,
This September?
this September.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's why it was like,
Yeah,
they
for
needed,
sure.
they were like, oh, we need, because they had a proposal to have half their stuff in Worcester, I think, and
Yeah.
half of it in Montpelier, and now they're gonna try to put it all in Montpelier
Oh, wow.
at the Country Club Road site, but that might require some additional. I won't say temporary, because it's not really temporary, they're short-term
Mhm.
Like modular buildings.
modular, yeah, it'll be, they actually describe it more as yurts, kind of the
Oh, okay.
yurt-like buildings,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't be 24-foot tall yurts, so they
Right.
wouldn't
Yes.
meet the minimum, and therefore it was gonna prevent them from taking advantage of that, and so we wanted to make sure we could. But again, it's just on the proposal, and if council decides they want to stick with the existing zoning, they can. But my sense is that accommodating Turtle Island is a priority for them, so.
Did that proposal come from you and the planning department?
It came from their need. They came in to say, we've got to change the plans. We're not gonna do Worcester. We're gonna do
Yeah.
all of it in Montpelier. Here's how we're gonna accommodate the additional students. We would just need to do these yurts.
Yeah,
And we said, well, you can't.
right, at the moment with the,
And there's this one line here that, three words that are keeping you from being able to do that. We could take it to city council. We already have the interim regulations warned. But I did want to advise all of you that we had put that in there at their request,
Okay.
just so that way you guys aren't kind of caught by surprise that there's an additional change
Mhm.
that you guys didn't see.
I did see it in an email from Adrian, my city councilor.
Oh.
To constituents just today.
So that's the story behind that one. And we'll hope to see what happens with the Turtle Island proposal, but that is the update on the interim proposal. There will be a public hearing. We'll see what happens. Of course, like with any public hearing, they could warn additional public hearings. They could add additional items. It's really, the ball is in the city council's
Right, I was
court.
gonna say, it's in their court now.
Yeah, once it's in their hands, they're the ones driving the bus.
And then we also received comments today from, oh, I forget his name. About the first floor residential.
Vince
zoning
Luzzi.
Oh,
ordinance.
Vince Aluzzi, yes. Yes.
So I was trying to like read between the lines. So currently it's like commercial on the first floor and then residential above it.
Yes.
And he wants to convert the commercial part of the property into a residential part.
I haven't fully read what he was proposing. He sent something to me. I got on the phone with him to kind of talk to him because he thought you at the planning commission were the ones reviewing the interim regulations tonight. So he was trying to get it to us tonight. And I said, no, it's going to be taken up on July 9th and it's at the city council.
Okay.
So he decided he wasn't going to amend his proposal because he was going to take it back and rework it, phrase it to the city council. But he said, just send it out. As I said, I haven't taken the time to read through it because of my schedule today.
Mhm.
So I can't respond specifically to what he's talking about, but he will also be there to make recommendations to council to take up some additional changes. I'll
Okay.
have to see what they are. I did advise him of the two process. We've got the interim process for those emergency quick changes.
Right.
And I said, if not, we will, whatever doesn't get considered is in our pile for consideration. So I sent it to you. You all have it, so we can go through as we move forward through the rest of the summer and the fall to put together our new zoning changes. We will have Vince's proposal as well to consider.
Okay. Does anybody, well, do people want to talk any more about zoning changes, not the interim zoning changes, proposed future zoning changes? Or what time is it, given our heat wave?
All I would say is that I did have time to read the memo, and I mean, it's a long memo. It's very specific to his exact situation, but certainly it was reasonable. It's basically the idea is give people fair warning about the circumstance, and then if they're fairly warned and they want to reside on a first floor, they could. So just could create some more housing. I think I'm in support of it. I guess it's going to city council, not through us, but sounded reasonable to me.
Yeah, did anybody else have time to look over
Nope,
the comments?
I did not.
No. Sean?
Yeah, I gave it a quick scan. You know, like they said, it's several pages. I tried to drill down to what he was asking. And yes, converting or being allowed to convert a non-conforming commercial space. The spirit of that I'm open to for sure.
I mean, I think my only hesitation there would be, I think I looked up the address and it's on Main Street, kind of up farther across from the library. But I could see a situation where, say like, 3 Penny wanted to convert their ground floor to housing, how that would have an impact on the downtown kind of like commercial corridor. So I'm curious what the extent of, if this is a rule that applies to the entire downtown district, or if he's outside of the kind of considered downtown district. I want to see more mixed use land, mixed use land development downtown. I would hope that apartment buildings going up would have commercial storefronts. I think that creates a vitality that we don't want to see disappear. So that would be my concern. But again, I think this property itself is a bit farther up on Main Street. It's not right downtown.
I think what he might be referring to, again, I haven't read it in detail, is there is a river hazard regulation that was passed after the 2023 flood that prohibited conversion of those commercial spaces below base flood elevation to residential, because we were going through and we studied and identified the 20 or so properties that had first floor flooding for residential. All those people get displaced. It's very hard.
Yeah.
They lose everything. It's particularly difficult for a resident who loses and gets displaced in the flood. And so we work to elevate some buildings, buy out some buildings and tear them down. And then suddenly commercial properties were saying, well, people won't put their businesses here because they flood. I'm converting them to rentals. And we're like, that's
also
we'll ignore
dicey.
ethics and just go in and say it's really unfair to the people who are renting. But it was a policy question, and we took it to city council, and city council made the vote that said, no, we should not be allowing people to convert those spaces into rentable units. And that we should keep those. If you want to keep those, you can keep them as commercial. If you want to convert them to residential, you have to elevate them.
Right.
And so, but their city council is welcome to take that back up and decide whether or not that's the appropriate path.
Mm-hmm. Okay, does anybody else want to discuss? I mean, we could open up our zoning regulation changes matrix again or we could review minutes. What are you guys up for?
I don't personally have additional thoughts around zoning. We could do that. I would prefer maybe more members for a
That is-
more complete and lively discussion.
Yeah.
So I would personally lean towards reviewing minutes and closing early.
All right.
But curious what
Dave or
others think.
Sean, any objection to that? Nope. All right, let's consider our minutes.
So it was noted at the last meeting, according to the minutes, because I wasn't here, I had to leave early from the last meeting,
Mhm.
that the also in attendance wasn't filled out, but it is on the ones I have. And that the discussion of alleged open meeting violation, that should be corrected from what had been put in there. And my suggestion would be really to just shorten it up. Mike spoke to city's council and was advised that there was nothing more to be done. The issue with the doors has been resolved.
I see something on both sets of minutes about general business. The first line says there were no members of the public with comments in attendance, but then it goes on to detail members of the public with comments. So I think striking those sentences
Yeah.
would be appropriate.
That's in both of them? Yes, it
Mhm.
is. Okay.
Okay, is anyone ready to make a motion? What's up, Mike?
The only other change on June 9th, it says the city received $900,000 to buy out 3 buildings and elevate 3 others. We received $900,000 to elevate 3,
Okay,
and 3 buildings were bought out, but that wasn't from the same 900,000.
Mm.
So it should say city received 900,000 to elevate 3 buildings, period. 3 other properties have been bought out or will be bought out.
So I would say with those changes being striking the comments that there were no members of the public with comments in attendance, and in the June 9th minutes, changing the line about $900,000 and how it was used. I motion that we approve both minutes from June 9th and April 28th.
Second that motion.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, do we have to make a motion to adjourn? Yeah.
You can,
Like,
some places, well, some will
Well-
just go and say, the chair will sometimes just go through and say,
we are
the meeting
adjourned.
is adjourned. Or other committees say we need to have a motion. It just depends on the committee.
Well, I think Ariane, doesn't
Usually
she,
does a
she
motion.
does motion.
Usually she does, yeah.
Okay. Motions to
So
adjourn.
moved. I move that we adjourn.
All right, Kate,
I second that.
Tim.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.